Hey everybody, Danielle here from the blog Keep Calm and Read on my new podcast, Keep Calm and Read On. Oh, the same title, I didn't even need to say it. Thanks for showing up here and listening to a new episode. Obviously, this is no longer the Gourmet Reader. It wasn't going in that direction. This is the new direction, and I'm hoping it will be successful, and I'm excited for it. Excuse me. So I'm doing a new approach today to how I podcast. For one thing, before I go on, for about an hour, I've been working with my microphone because I just redid my bedroom, and so I was trying to fix things so that it'd be easier to podcast and record, but unfortunately it's really not, because my laptop is just roaring right now. The fan is so loud. Excuse me. And because of that, it's coming up as background noise. It sounds awful, and it's still coming up as background noise right now, and maybe you hear it, and if so, I apologize. I did my best to get rid of it. But yeah, I'm going to be doing my new format of kind of improv episodes, which means I would not be editing for the most part. When I say for the most part, I still have a bit of a cold, so I might be editing to get rid of the cough, but for the most part, this episode will be completely unedited, because I really enjoyed the 50 Shades of Grey episode I recorded, where I just kind of said things and it was more organic, instead of, reading from a script and, sounding very fake. So I'm going to try that, see how it goes. Real quick, new episodes of this podcast, I'm planning on premiering next month in April. The date I'm going for is April 20th, so be sure to tune in, and all the episodes they'll be daily. So if you want to know more about that, just head over to my website, keepcalmandreadon.net, or just, subscribe on iTunes and wait, and you'll see the episodes pop up, and you'll eventually know what they are. I'll have an explanation episode in there somewhere. So, yeah, why don't we get started? This episode I've titled, Will the Real Mockingjay Please Stand Up? And what are we talking about today in honor of the new Hunger Games movie coming out? I'll be talking about the newest movie. This is why editing comes in handy, but I'm not going to do that. I will not. I will show you all the sides of me. In honor of the new Hunger Games movie coming out, Mockingjay Part 1, I've decided to talk about the Hunger Games and really kind of delve into this final book and this most recent movie, because I have a lot of opinions on it, and I'm sure you do as well, so feel free to give me your opinions, because they matter, of course. So again, like with 50 Shades of Grey, I will say I did write a script for this, but I'm not going to go by the script I wrote, because first of all, I wrote it 2 months ago, so I hardly even know, when I read it, I feel very disconnected from it, but I have points here that I had written down before I wrote it, so I'm going to go by those, and everything else improv, I'm just kind of looking at those and then rehashing them to tell you how I feel about Mockingjay and stuff, and asking this question, will the real Mockingjay please stand up? So what I mean by that question is, I feel like Katniss as a Mockingjay, it just doesn't work. The whole final book, to me, does not work, and I want to know why that is, and I'm hoping to delve into that a bit, and kind of explain, why I think Katniss is not a good Mockingjay, and I really want to see what the story would look like if we did have a Mockingjay, a real Mockingjay. So the first point I want to make is that I don't hate the final book per se. I know it's kind of almost a popularity contest or not a popularity contest. It's like you're cool when you don't like the final Hunger Games book, you know, and then you're hipster if you do like it. And I just want to put it out there. I really love the first book. The second book I really love as well. I just hate the ending. And because I hated the ending of Catching Fire, going into the final book, I started reading it and then I stopped because I was so disgusted. And then I came back to it like a year later, actually over a year later, and really didn't like it. And I knew I wouldn't like it. I wanted to like it though. But one thing I will say that's good about it is that what I love about Suzanne Collins is that she does a great job at looking at the psychology of Katniss and looking at like post-traumatic stress disorder. A child who's been subjected to these awful things and just trying to grasp at anything that will help her heal. I think that's really awesome, and I think that's a strength of the Hunger Games. I think all 3 of the books capture this psychology, mostly of Katniss, but even the other characters like Haymitch and Peeta and Gale, you really see Suzanne Collins just tell a good character study story. And if that's what the books were, then I think they would have been a lot stronger. Like, well, actually, I'm not going to get into that right now. But yeah, I just think it's a very good psychological study. But as I said, it was hard coming into the final book because for me, the ending of the second book just gave me no hope for the final book. So another point I'm going to make is that I really, really love the Hunger Games movies. I think that they are an example of good movie making when it comes to adapting a book. Because we've seen this before. You had Lord of the Rings. Now, of course, I've never seen those movies because I haven't read the books. So I can't really comment on them. But one big series is Harry Potter, which I grew up with. And love the books. I've read them 6 times. And I'm really disappointed with the movies. And it's not that the Harry Potter movies are necessarily unenjoyable. Far from it. I do enjoy them quite a bit. But are they good movies? Quite frankly, no. And the Hunger Games, it's different. You can enjoy them, and they're well-crafted movies. And here is why I feel this way. So one of my favorite parts of Catching Fire, the movie, is when, and I don't know all the vocabulary, so forgive me, but Katniss and Peeta are at this ball, I guess celebrating that they're the victors. And while they're there, it shows President Snow with a glass of wine saluting them, and then he drinks the wine, and when he pulls it away from his mouth, you see this kind of backwash of blood. And what I love about this scene is that it's just a very delicate and small thing that people might go, oh, why was that necessary? Or maybe even forget about entirely. But what I love about it is that in the book, it's quite different. Katniss, or President Snow, comes to Katniss's house, and he kind of threatens her, and she says that he smells like blood. But you can't really do this in a movie without it being cliche. You can't have Katniss, you can't first of all hear her thoughts. That would be extremely cliche. But if Katniss outright said it, like to somebody, oh, well, his blood, he smells like blood, his breath smells like blood, that would just be weird. And so the filmmakers had to make a choice and say, well, how can we, do this right? How can we make, portray this without it being the cliche or being, just throwaway? And they did this really creative thing where they talked about, like, his blood source or whatever by showing that when he takes a drink, his backwash is bloody, excuse me. And that's just really creative. And I feel like that alone, and many other choices, put the Hunger Games a step further than Harry Potter. Because Harry Potter, very rarely did they take those creative leaps. Maybe a bit in the final films, but in the end they sort of left out so much and added these scenes that they wanted to be artistic but just didn't work. Where the Hunger Games is different. They add scenes and they work really well. And so that's why I love these movies. And I genuinely enjoyed the final film. Or I shouldn't say final film, part 1 of the final film. Which brings me to my next point. Because even though I love these movies and I think they're amazing, by far Mockingjay part 1 was the weakest. Mainly because of the source material. And a lot of people hated it because it was so boring, but I enjoy that stuff. I enjoy the build-up to things, so to me it was not boring. I greatly enjoyed it. But even the movie was just so like the book. I mean, obviously it's like the book, but I'll get into that in a second, but so annoyingly like the book that I became frustrated. But I just want to point out, why do they need to call these movies part 1 and part 2? Sorry, I felt like I had to cough. Why can't they just give him a creative title? You know? And say they wanted to call this first one Mockingjay, because that would fit, you know, like she's gearing up to be the representative of, the rebels. Then why couldn't they name the final movie something else that went with the final movie? And it's not just Hunger Games that does this. Harry Potter, again, The Hobbit sort of did it, but like it always had The Hobbit in front of it and then a title. But still, they had titles. Why didn't they give this? Like, instead of calling it Hobbit Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, The Desolation of Smaug, and whatever other titles they had were put in. And that's cool, I like that. I wish more movies would do this. I'm kind of disappointed that these Hunger Games movies, which I think are pretty artistically brilliant, just didn't do that. It's a bit annoying. So now to my problem with the book and the movie. What I kind of hate, and this is why I don't think that Katniss is the real Mockingjay. In the beginning book, like, first of all, I think the Hunger Games would have been stronger as one book. I'm not sure entirely how that would work, but I think it would be a more solid story, because I can't quite, my brain's just blanking right now. I think it would have been a better book, because as one book instead of a series. Because Katniss, in the first book, we see that she's being manipulated by the government. And we know that that's wrong. And that says something. That's a powerful theme in these books. And that's what makes the first book so good. And even in the second book, that's amazing how it's done. Like, where, again, the manipulation's there and she's trying to get rid of it. But what I hate about the ending of the second book and then the entire third book is how now Katniss is being manipulated by the people who are on her side. It's like she wasn't manipulated enough to begin with. Now we need to also manipulate her. You know, we're her friends and we're going to manipulate her emotions so that she'll act the way we want her to act. Like, they're using the same tools to fight the Capitol as what the Capitol does to fight them. They're no better than the Capitol. And I know that says something like, oh, we're all human, but I don't think that's what Collins was going for at all. That, from what I've observed. You know, and here's another example. I'm going to bring Harry Potter in again. What's cool about the Harry Potter books is that, you know, in, like, I think it's the 6th book, the new Minister of Magic keeps asking Harry, you know, please, like, be a symbol for the government, for the Ministry of Magic. You know, come in and be a bright face to show people that, hey, you're on our side again, and, you know, let people have hope when they see you saying, oh yeah, everything's going to be okay. And Harry refuses because of how the Ministry treated him in the past, and then he says he's Dumbledore's man through and through, that he would rather stick with Dumbledore and the Hogwarts school than be on the side of the Ministry. I had to move this. There we go. And that's nice because it's showing that... I need to move my microphone. Okay. And that's really nice because it's showing that Harry doesn't want to be a part, like, obviously the Ministry isn't entirely the enemy, the Death Eaters and Voldemort are an enemy, but the Ministry's not a friend either. You know, they're manipulative, and Harry recognizes this, so he says, well, you know what? I'm not on your side, because you're not necessarily the good guys. You're not the bad guys, but you're not the good guys. With Katniss, she's surrounded by these people who are saying they're the good guys, but they're manipulating her so hardcore to act the way they want her to act. Like, you know, they tell her, I'm trying to think, like, they set up situations to tug at Katniss's heartstrings, to make her do things, to make her sing a song, or make her, you know, yell at President Snow on the camera, get her to be what they want her to be. And I get it that they need that, but oh my gosh, that just bothers me of how much they manipulate her, because she's obviously damaged. And that's another thing. You know, there's one thing when you have a novel and the characters are doing this, but I don't even think it's the characters. It's Collins. It's Suzanne Collins. She is manipulating Katniss hardcore. You know, she doesn't need to put her character in these situations. And it's just any other way it could have been done. You know, it just seems like the author, she knows how much Katniss is suffering. And she never even kind of set it up for a way to for Katniss to have a happy ending. And people could say, well, okay, you know, not every story's supposed to have a happy ending. And I completely agree with that. But I think she didn't even set that up. Like, she didn't even offer this kind of thing where this kind of tragedy, or it could have been a happy ending, but it wasn't. She didn't even make room for that. She was just kind of set in this thing where her characters just lost all dimension, and they had a plan for them set before, you know, they even realized it. And, you know, Collins is playing God, and, you know, that's all well and good, but it really bothers me in this situation, because it's so plot-driven that it's almost not respecting her own character. And I don't know, it bothers me. And maybe some of you are sitting behind the microphone listening, or not behind the microphone, behind your computer, and just thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, it's not what it's like. And if you disagree with me, let me know and tell me why you disagree. But I just, you know, I think the final film, or films to come, it's very manipulative. You know, to see Katniss, you know, be weak and struggling and go through a hard time just for our entertainment. Like, it's like the first book, it was the government that was manipulating and making Katniss go through a hard time. But now this final book, the author and the people around Katniss that we're supposed to trust are doing the manipulation. And it's like, are we supposed to be on their side? Because we were taught that we weren't supposed to be. I don't know. So, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I just want to know, you know, couldn't they have gotten another Mockingjay? Couldn't they have? And I get, like, where they're like, you know, Katniss ate the berries, or was going to eat the berries. She symbolized this revolution. But if they did it so well to manipulate the people, you know, obviously Peeta was stronger. You know, people loved Katniss, but people also loved Peeta. Like, I fail to see why it had to be Katniss. Why didn't they do a better job at trying to save Peeta? It was just, very screwed up. I don't get that at all. And again, if you have an answer to that, please explain it to me. Would love to hear it. Would love to have a conversation. I just don't get it. Anyway, so that's just my thought on Mockingjay. I just really want to know, will the real Mockingjay please stand up, you know? I really want to see a different Mockingjay. I don't want to see Katniss going through this. It's just awful. So who do you guys think should have been the Mockingjay? Do you think Katniss fits in the role of the Mockingjay? Or do you think that, somebody else should have? And do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Are you in the middle? Do you sort of agree with my points but disagree with others? Let me know in the podcast comments. Again, come April, new episodes are going to be premiering daily on Keep Calm and Read On, so be sure to check that out. And check out my new blog, keepcalmandreadon.net. I post weekly blogs. I'm also having tons of new things on there, so be sure to listen. You're going to love it. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you guys soon.